What's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're talking about my Jeep Wrangler. If you're new to the channel, I've had this probably a week or two now, and there's a lot of mods that I want to do to this. Today's video is going to cover one of probably the biggest mods for the Jeep Wrangler, and that is a lift kit. So we're going to get into that later in this video. But as you can see, it's a perfect day out. I have all the doors off. I have part of the roof off because the back of the roof, it's pretty bulky to take on and off all the time constantly. So here we have the Jeep. I'm not really at an off-road area, just at these power lines here, just to get a little bit of articulation going in the stock form, because I want to take this off-road soon, stock, to see how well it does, and then compare that to when I do a lift and tires, see how much more ground clearance I get. But right now we're flexing just a little bit. We have that tire stuffed up in the back wheel well there. And then of course with larger tires, I'm going to need more clearance for the larger tires. So today, let's go ahead and talk about what is the best lift kit for the JL Wrangler. Alright, so as you can see, I'm at the driver's side of my Jeep here, and the side here where the door used to be is pretty much up to my waist here. That's how much of a drop off I have here. So it's a perfect step to talk about lift kits for the JL Wrangler. Now I have some notes for myself so that way I can stay on track. But if you are new to the channel, I have a 2017 Toyota Tacoma that I've done quite a lot of mods to. I'm basically doing the same thing on this that I did to that, but it's a little bit different. You know, we have solid front axles, a little bit different in the suspension components, pretty much the same, but there are some differences that I need some help from you guys as to the best parts that I can do and the most reliable parts, basically. When you lift a vehicle, you can have some issues, and I've learned in the past some of the problems that I want to try to avoid going forward. So as far as a lift for my JL Wrangler, I want to stay kind of conservative, but at the same time, it's a Jeep. I want it to perform really, really good off-road, but I'm going to be driving it on-road, unfortunately, most of the time. That's just how these rigs are designed, unless you have a true hardcore off-roader that you only take off-road. I don't get to go off-road as much as I would like to, but I also want to have the best of both worlds, and that's what I've done on my Tacoma. So on the Jeep, as far as height goes, I've seen leveling kits, you know, lift kits, really big lift kits. I want to stay around 3.5 to 4 inches. I don't want to go 2 inches, you know, that looks like a really good kit. I've seen that's kind of maybe the most popular. Stuffing 35s on here is the size tire that I want to go with, and I have seen you can do that on the stock JL Wrangler. Now, with that, you don't get a lot of clearance, obviously, in your wheel wells because you don't have a lift to accommodate for those larger tires. So 35s on a stock JL is perfect if you're never going off-road and you just want a little bit more of that beefy look. So I don't want to go as low as a 2-inch lift. I also don't want to go to a 6-inch lift. I was really debating on going full out on this, going with a 6-inch lift. Keep it kind of conservative with 35s. Obviously you could run a larger tire, but then you start getting into some other suspension components that you have to replace, and maybe a larger axle to accommodate re-gear and things like that. So I think 35 is a good starting point for this build, and that's why I want to kind of go in the middle with 3.5 inches to 4 inches and not go any larger than that. I have heard that if you get to 6 inches, correct me if I'm wrong, once you get to 6 inches, you kind of start losing the stability of the truck, and obviously that makes sense the higher that you go, but I want to stay conservative and still get as much flex as possible when I go off-road, because I really want to push this more than my Tacoma, since I have the option to do that, you know, solid front axle, lower overhangs, and everything like that. So in my search for lift kits, I found 5, mainly probably the 5 top lift kits for the JL Wrangler. I'm going to start off with rough country lift. Now, I have heard a lot of positives and negatives on rough country. If you haven't seen, that's how I kind of ruined my second gen Toyota Tacoma with a rough country 6-inch lift kit. So for that reason alone, I'm probably going to stay away from rough country. If any of you guys have any of these lifts that I'm talking about, let me know the pros and cons with how long you've had it and how you like it overall. But the rough country lift I found was 3.5 inches, and it was about $700, so it is kind of on the lower end-ish of the lifts that I have found. And this kit also comes with a control arm drop. Now that is one thing that I'm not exactly sure on the solid front axle suspension. What are some components that I need to get in a piece together lift kit that will provide me with the maximum travel? Since this is different from the independent front suspension on my Tacoma, I'd like to at least get the best, kind of like I've said before, the best of both worlds, and get long travel. I have seen that you can get a long travel kit versus a short arm kit. It's a little bit different than on a Tacoma because the suspension is really different, but I think you can actually change those components on this if you'd like to on further dates. So I'm not sure on the control arm drop. That's one thing that this kit came with, if that's something that is important. And then one thing I want to throw in here real quick is the disconnecting sway bar. Since I did not buy a Rubicon, that has the option of pushing an electronic button in order to disconnect your sway bar. I have seen a few comments from you guys on kits that I can buy to do that. I need to do more research on that because I feel like that's probably something that I'm going to want to do. I haven't taken this off-road just yet in the stock form, so we'll see how well it does, kind of a benchmark to how much better it could be. But I think a disconnecting sway bar kit is probably something that I'd like to look into. But moving on to the next lift kit now from TerraFlex. This is a 3.5-inch lift, and I've seen them go upwards of $2,500, which is a significant price for a lift kit. That's a pretty well pieced together kit. I've seen a lot of components in the kit, and one thing that I'm not sure about is new shocks versus just new coils. Now obviously if I get new shocks, I'll have longer travel, so I'm probably going to end up getting new coils and new shocks to accommodate that. So that seems like the best option to go with as far as the shocks and coils. But for $2,500, that's a little bit more than I'm willing to spend. The kit for my Tacoma was about $1,400 with all the components that I got for it. So I'd like to stay closer to that range, simply because I've seen a lot of kits that you're almost spending more money for the brand name than the actual function. Of course, more expensive kits can provide you with better performance, but there's also kits for, let's just say, a third of the price that can do the exact same thing. So while you're not paying for that name brand part, you know, like buying a Lamborghini versus a sports car, obviously you're paying a premium for that vehicle because of the brand, but you can get other cars that perform almost as good, if not even better, than some of the larger or more expensive kits. So I want to stick around that $1,000 mark. I feel like that's pretty reasonable. Moving on to the next kit now, I've seen Mopar, which is obviously a brand from Jeep that you can use. They mainly have a 2-inch lift kit, so that's kind of off the list because I want to go higher than that. Untitled is another brand that doesn't really look like much, doesn't sound like a brand. I've never really even heard of them, so I think I'm just going to stay away from that brand just for that reason. The next kit is Skyjacker. I have heard of that one. You can get long travel suspension kits for about $800. Now, how much more travel will I get than a short arm kit? That's kind of an obvious question. Of course, you'll probably get more, but how much more? Is it worth it to get longer arms, do a longer travel arm kit? Will it ride as smooth on-road as a short arm kit? Because like I said, this vehicle is going to be on pavement 95% of the time. Unfortunately, that's just how it is with my builds, but I do want it to perform, like I said, off-road really well, but I don't want to sacrifice much of the on-road driving capabilities. So let me know down below, is a long arm kit, is that the way that I should go? Is that kind of overboard, or will that give me the articulation that I'm looking for, plus having the sway bar disconnect? And then the last kit on today's list is Superlift. They're about $1,000. And one thing that I found with this lift kit that I forgot about is the rake of the vehicle. Now on my Toyota Tacoma, they are raked a little bit higher in the rear than in the front, and obviously that's for bed weight use. I put motorcycles, dirt bikes, whatever I need to in the back, so I leveled that a little bit differently compared to this. I don't have anything that I need to put in the back. I'm not really going to be using this for towing since I have my Tacoma, so I want it to sit very level. So I need to find a kit, of course, that has that perfect rake to make you sit pretty much level. So that's one thing that I need to look into with all of these different lift kits is how much do they lift in the front and the rear. I haven't really dived into that much with all these specific lift kits. So let me know, is there a difference in raising the front and the rear? Since there's a solid front axle in the front and the rear, I would assume it's a lot more similar than with a truck like my Tacoma having independent and solid. You just have to lift them a little bit differently up front and in the rear. So let me know, what do you guys think is the best lift kit for the JL Wrangler? And I pretty much kind of want to start on this build. I want to get the lift as soon as possible. That way I can put the wheels and tires, go with 35s. I'm going to go with a 17 by 9-inch wheel. Most likely it's going to be about -18. So let me know also, is that enough? I've been through a couple wheels and tires on my Tacoma to kind of know where I want them to poke out. So I think -18 is definitely going to give me the look that I'm going for. I'm probably going to have that tire sticking out at least 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. I think that's pretty reasonable. Once I do different fender flares, of course, I will really start to dial this into the look that I'm going for. With this being a new project build for the channel, I'd like to see a lot of you Jeep guys and see what you've done to your Jeeps. I know there are a ton of accessories, modifications, and everything that you can do to the Jeep. Probably a lot more than my Tacoma. So if you are new to the channel, if you stumbled across us and you have a Jeep, thanks for tuning in. Let me know your ideas. I love talking about mods for any vehicle really, but let's see what we can do to this Jeep Wrangler and get this build started. So if you enjoyed today's video, give it a huge thumbs up. Smash that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, if you have a Jeep, if you like Jeeps and you want to see this build. I'll see you guys in the next video.